Actually, we should talk about that a little bit because we haven't
obviously
very carefully. But I am curious what this means for the LPL in the future, the new laws, because I don't know how closely these are going to be adhered to about the 2 hours of playtime a week. And there are certain solutions you can come up with right now, such as if there are good players who are 14, 15 years old, you can simply move them out of the country. You can send them to Taiwan, you could send them to Korea, and you can train them. So I think it's not going to hurt that badly in the immediate future.
Of on this. Basically, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, go on.
So the problem that I see is that how do you identify players who are 9 years old now? By the time they're 14, it would be like trying to identify who is going to be the next great athlete when they've only played a game 2 hours a week before they were 18 years old. It's basically impossible to identify talent.
I don't know if Dagda knows this, or maybe I'm incorrect on this, but I believe Nelson told me, and I am going from memory here, so I might be incorrect. Nelson told me something along the lines of it somehow won't apply to the Korean server. So if you were to somehow play on the Korean server, you could do it. I don't know if that's accurate. And then the other thing was, he said something along the lines of it wouldn't apply to one of the leagues. I think it was LDL it applied to, but maybe not LSPL or something. Did you hear anything like this, Dagda?
Oh, I haven't heard that. No, as far as I know, it's definitely applied to LPL, obviously, but the things that I'd heard was not that you could play in the Korean server, and that it was more so that teams were looking into buying spots in other leagues and just using that as their development team.
Right.
So it's we're going to just buy a spot in PCS because I know, say for EDG, RNG, and those lads, they all have teams that they're already linked to in PCS, so that becomes then their training region or PCS and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know the ins and outs of the actual law itself.
That's a short-term solution because again, it's really yes, we have these players now who we know are skilled and we're developing in order to, when they turn 17, be able to play within their regions, right? But when it's how do I scout in 4 years? How do I scout a 14 or 15-year-old because they've never been given the chance to play enough for me to be able to scout them? And that's still true. And the problem with playing on the Korean server is you need a Korean social security number in order to make an account. And so, again, it would be how do you scout the players to give the Korean social security numbers to be able to play on the Korean server? It's still its own entire problem.
I 100% agree with you. And I think as well, obviously, if they're not playing enough, they're never going to be good enough to actually compete at the top level. The only thing I will say is that if they can find other places to play or other ways to play, I know a lot of the teams have in-house testing and stuff like that. So essentially, you can message a team and be hey, look, my son Johnny, I think he's really good. Let's bring him into the EDG place. And they have a bunch of different tests that are set up to test their reflexes and all this kind of stuff. It was LGD did a behind the scenes for their one with a little bit, and they actually had Shadow tested on it to see if he would be good enough to be a pro player and stuff. So there does seem to be still academies and other stuff in the background that they can bring them into and see if they are good enough. But I think the biggest thing, which is I agree with you pointing out, is if you're only going to be able to play for 2 hours a week, there's not a hope you're going to be good enough to play versus the guys that are able to play for 20 to 30 hours a week.
I mean, it's great if they can test people, but how would they know who to test if you only see 2 hours a week of somebody's game?
Yeah, what I mean is if you can find a way around it, then you can go and get tests. But again, if you're playing in the Korean server, it's okay, cool, that's maybe one way, but I don't know exactly what the ins and outs of it would look like, right?
People were saying you can, it's the same shit that happened in Korea before they removed the law. So there used to be a law in Korea where it would basically cut you off if you were below a certain age at 10 p.m. But people would just use their 90-year-old grandma's social security number, make an account based on that, and then just not ignore that. That law has since been taken off the books. Weirdly, at about the same time this new Chinese law was put in. But I just didn't know how serious the enforcement of this was going to be. It's one thing for a government to posture and say, yes, this is what the law is, and there's another thing entirely for them to enforce it. My understanding was that they had intended or were intending to use new facial recognition technology, so it'd be a lot harder to get around, basically.
Yeah, the two big things I think is population size. China slightly bigger than Korea, just by a smidge. So trying to get everyone onto the Korean server with IDs and everything probably not going to work out. from an enforcement point of view, I know like OMG had this mid laner called Cream who was basically OMG. Like he was the Chovy of OMG, and he's just gone. They had to drop him. He's 17 years old, so he's just off the books, can't play Sorry. So it does seem to be taken fairly serious on team side, and he's not even like being dropped down to the Academy League. He's just gone. So I think it is being taken fairly seriously, but I don't know what that is going to look like. I mean, Nelson would definitely have more contacts in China than I would to actually, get to know what the system's going to look like and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I find tidbits here and there, mostly through like Lyric, because he used to work with some of the Chinese guys on team side. But that's kind of the extent of the information that I get fed.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it's a big issue because a lot of these players who are up and coming can be shipped off to PCS for the time being until they're of age. It's like 5 years from now that I'm concerned about. Yes. I think the next 5 years are going to be fine. I think if this law remains in place, and the Chinese esports side is actually very interesting because like League of Legends is obviously okay, but China has also blocked the release of new games. Like Valorant hasn't been released in China yet, and so seeing the future of Chinese esports is like, seems like we're going to get 5 years out of current esports that have been released, and then maybe the Chinese esports scene just dies, which I think is very under reported on in the West, because the Chinese esports scene up until this point has been the biggest market in terms of viewership and eyeballs, and it's incredibly important to the global esports infrastructure. I mean, you can see all the money coming in. Companies like Oppo and Mercedes-Benz, I don't think would be sponsoring the World Championship if it wasn't for the enormous Chinese viewership. It contributes a majority of the views that we have for Worlds. So the removal of it or the lessening of it is extremely, extremely impactful on a global scale. And I know teams that have had significant wings in China, professional teams that are not Chinese based, so based in Korea, based in the West, that had expanded into China, are now pulling back their operations almost completely as a result of this law. So behind the scenes, like there's a lot of movement, I have to say.
Yeah, and I think it's something like 70% of Riot's income comes from China or something insane, right? So like basically you could cut every other region and China would keep them afloat. So the fact that now that massive market is going to be changed, I mean, even just from a standpoint of things you can do esports wise for Riot are now going to change as well, because you're not going to have the same sort of income that you did from the massive influx you had from China. So I think it definitely is going to mess up a lot of things. Not only just like Chinese esports, but as you say, like esports as a whole, this has such a massive impact on the global esports.
On the upside, here's the one. I'll find the silver lining in this cloud.
What's this bad?
No, it's better than that. Here's the good news. Even though this doesn't actually apply, like if you actually look in the last few years, like the big teams that come from China tend to actually have the older players that are established and played 2 or 3 years. It's not really like they send like the 17-year-old rookie like the Korean teams often do to Worlds itself. Even so, there is a world where if you have to technically be 18 to start playing League, you're probably only going to hit your peak at 20, which means in theory, hopefully the number one seed from China doesn't fucking choke every single year, except one time ever or whatever it was. Fucking hell. Listen, it doesn't have a great record, but it's NA for fuck's sake. The fact that China's had that many number one seeds, just like, give me a break. Can you make the final at least? Come on.
Also, I have to say, with this news, Vietnam, Southeast Asia, India. This is your time to step the fuck up in the world of esports.
I don't know if India's really going to heed that call. They play more games at this point, like Fortnite or whatever.
Sure. I mean, but this is the time that all I'm saying is that if I was in the government of some of these countries and I was looking at a real opportunity to establish myself on a global sporting stage, now's the time to put the money in.
PCS could be the one. Let's be real. First of all, PCS, you are a fucking disgrace. This particular world's like, what were you doing beyond? It goes without saying. And then where the fuck was PSG talent? You had a team basically like dead man walking in your game. You didn't even do anything. So that was already disgrace. But yeah, you send over players like Cream, and they'll be fucking banging tomorrow, mate. That'll be a very interesting future Worlds if they actually do farm these players out. I'm very interested to see.
Yeah, and obviously, like, India's not going to step up in League of Legends immediately, or maybe ever. But my
Just
point is,
esports,
in the world of esports, like, if you see this opportunity where China is trying to back out of it, and there's a chance for you to develop talent within these regions methodically over time. Because remember, the only reason China got to where they were in esports, by the way, they're irrelevant in many esports. They're only relevant basically in Dota and League of Legends. Like, FPS has not been a strength of China's. These rosters were developed over a number of years due to incubation within the region. Like, China didn't even get super good in League of Legends until 2018, 2019. And that's because they brought the Shy in from Korea and put him in a training camp when he was like 14 years old and just kept him there until he turned 17. Like,
that's been their plan the whole time. From the Street Fighter movie or something, where they had him in that like pod, just watching all the violence being injected with like steroids all the time. Which, by the way, that might be how you create the Shy, if I had to guess. Just look at his fucking playing style. It's ridiculous, isn't he?
So I mean, it was, but I'm saying it was a multi-year project of player development that resulted in Chinese success within the game, and that can be emulated in many places. By
the way, I do have to like update that rant I had on the last Summon Insight. You know, when I said at the beginning, why are all these LPL experts always like so like self-depreciating, Monte? They're the first to hate on LPL and jump in there and say everything wrong before the fans do. Actually, you know what? I get it now, guys. Like, I tried to be like, the torchbearer, you guys can do it. Like, I'll even say this. I've told this story many times before. I was the whole year in 2015 telling like Frost Goran and Kelsey Morse, like, if you really believe they're the best, just say they're the best. They are really good. Monte doesn't even know how good LPL is. And then obviously after that Worlds Day, I was like, yeah, you're on your own now. Like, that's
the thing. We've seen them at their peak, and we've seen far too often them just shit the bed. And we're just like, look, I swear to God, on a good day, they look amazing. This isn't them. I mean, look what I did for EDG for the majority of this talk show, right? I've been like, EDG, I swear, get them on a good day. They look really, really good.
If they just stop doing the things that they're bad at, that they won't stop doing for whatever reason, then they're good.
Yeah.
They're just sandbagging. Yeah. I've heard this before.
That was it. That was the term. That's why, to be fair, I'll at least give it up to Kelsey. She did do that I did for my channel, where she just was like, where no sandbagging goes unquestionable. Like, she did the meme. Because here's the problem. At this point, logically, they've been sandbagging for about like 6 years, man. Sandbagging has to end eventually. You can't just keep doing it.
I don't know, like, you see moments from like Viper and stuff like that from finals where he just like 1v4s and Aphelios, and you're like, lads, get ready, this is going to hit the world stage, and then you're like, all right, he's just ran it down 3 times in a row. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I'll also throw this in as well, because I always have to say this if I talk about LPL. LPL essentially also did like a G2 and LEC, which is you stack a whole load of the best talent on top esports, then they don't even fucking go to Worlds. Like, remember, every other region, like NA, like for example, it is a bit depressing if you're an NA fan, because you basically sent your absolute best talent, in theory, your best rosters, and still didn't make it. Like the LPL, there's some years the best team, or second and third best team, they might fail the regional famously back in the day. Like, they don't always send the absolute best.
Yeah, that's what I was laughing. It was like, there was a small part of me that hoped that RNG actually won Worlds, just so we could say the Golden Road was stopped them by LNG. Like, that would have been such a beautifully poetic run. Because you look at... Sorry, go on, Monte.
No. But then you'd have to deal with the fact that Cryan is an MSI and World's champion, and that can't be allowed to happen. Look, man, I love Korean esports, but I'm embarrassed that Crown is a world champion. Okay.
By the way, don't worry as well. I guarantee you as well. Theon, especially with all those upcomer hype men in his ears, go on, Theon, write another article. He would do an article, Monty, that would be like, Faker never won MSI and Worlds in the same year, Monty. That would be the angle. It would just give, I can't, please. I know that is factually accurate, but please, you must put the context in. He would do that article. It would be like top 5 Midlands ever. Well, logically, Cryan has to be in there, Monty. He did win
technically,
MSI.
Faker did win. He won an All-Stars in 2014.
Oh, because they didn't win Worlds that year.
Oh, they didn't win Worlds that year because they fucked up. Oh, damn. That's true.
No, wait a second.
No, that's true. You're right.
No, but they won season 6, though. Oh, he did. He did it in season 6. Okay,
He did it in season 6. Okay.
Yes, he did it
2016.
He would just do it for everyone else, and he would just go, but is he the second best mid laner ever? Is he though? Because remember, part of journalism in America now is if you ask a ridiculous question, that if you actually put the context in, it wouldn't be right. You just don't put the context in. You just ask the question. You go, but did he though? We ask the questions on this show upcoming in the next hour, like, and then you just leave it open like a motherfucker. Just like let everything. I've already had to hear people telling me Bengi was the second best player of all time in League of Legends for about 4 years, and just go, I'm just going to enjoy it. Dude, it was like being like a prisoner of war, something like, please, no more, stop the water torch, I can't, please. I'll tell you anything.
Look, Thorin, all I'm saying is Faker has never won a world championship without Bengi.
That's true. They actually use that. That's a real angle they use as well, isn't it? They ignore, by the way, that like no one else has won like all these bazillion worlds as well. Like they make it sound like everyone else has done some shit. I know. What is even that? What even is that angle? What even is it?
They would all maybe they would have won with Bengi in what 2017.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe that is what was missing all along.
That's actually my least favorite, most tilting fact in League of Legends is that Faker never won worlds without Bengi. It actually just enrages me.
Yeah. To be fair, Rookie never won worlds without Baolan. So where was the real power line? That's what I want to know. What can I say? It's the same fact. You keep doing that all day long, can't you? I know it's garbage, isn't it?
I mean, they took Bell on it this year. Look what happened to IG, you know? So it's true.
Exactly. He was actually the one holding up the whole thing. So you thought he was just holding up the scoreboard. He held up that entire team structure. Maybe his hints were actually a warning to the others that we're being too aggressive and we should back off a little bit. And he was the only one holding back the rage, the storm, as it were. Same thing with Ning, by the way. To be fair, when Ning went out of the team and that Leon guy came in, the Leon guy actually looked like he tried to vaguely play like real League of Legends and the team fell apart instantly. And I was like, actually, they almost need to be like locked in an asylum madness, just no logic here. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah, that team is an absolute enigma. But that's the thing. We have so many of them in the LPL, and I think that's why, like, going back to your point, is like we're actually scared to like cheer them and like be like, yeah, look, they're going to do well, because you look at teams like Top Esports, right? And on paper, you're like, this is going to be absolutely insane. They look massive, and then you come into like their big issue was, hey, we didn't really know how to set up team fights and engage because 369 is more of a carry. Well, there you got Droll, like just as aggressive, great on engages. This is going to be amazing. And then the team absolutely goes to crap. And LNG smack them and RNG and everything. You're just like, you never really know. And I think like even when you're looking at Jackie Love was supposed to be a massive upgrade for that team. Looked phenomenal in spring. Looked phenomenal coming into 2020 as well. And then it was just like, well, summer came around and he's decided that Arcane Shift is only for damage and that's it. Like, so you never really know what to expect with this, with anyone in the LPL. So that's why every time we get to an international event, we're like, yeah, they're good, but like, here's the laundry list of things that I have to give as caveats for what I'm about to say.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.